Hey, One Family, your voice matters. Help shape future marriage resources by completing our quick survey at oneextraordinarymarriage.com/survey. It takes less than 5 minutes. And as a thank you, one lucky participant will win a 6 Pillars of Intimacy book and workbook bundle. Your insights are priceless. Go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/survey now.
From Naples, Florida, this is the One Extraordinary Marriage Show, where being busy is overdone, romancing is fun, and scheduling sex has taken the guesswork out of wondering when you're going to get some. I'm Tony DeLorenzo, your co-host, along with my beautiful wife, Elisa. From coast to coast and around the world, thank you for joining us. It's time to talk sex, love, and commitment. Give us a call or text us on the HUG hotline at 858-876-5663, or send us an email to hugs@oneextraordinarymarriage.com. In today's episode, we're sharing around those awkward moments that many of us have had when kids have discovered toys or other items that weren't intended for them to know about.
And there's an anonymous quote that says, if you're feeling embarrassed now, just remember that it will become a funny story in the future. And I think as we're discussing children, maybe grandchildren, maybe, housekeepers or whatnot, finding your toys or other items that you didn't want people to know about, there is that initial embarrassment. And then in many, many cases, it does become a funny story in the future. And that's going to be the focus of today's episode. But first, we start every episode with a hug. And a hug really, it gives us an opportunity to celebrate what you're doing in your marriage, to celebrate the transformation or the intentionality that the two of you are engaging in. And this hug comes from a post in the One Family private Facebook group that says, "Thank you to this group. We have been married 15 years and have 2 kids. We live far away from family, and we've never really been comfortable with babysitters, though we probably couldn't have afforded one anyway. This past Friday, and again this upcoming Friday, we are going on a date. Our oldest is now old enough and responsible enough to watch his sister for an hour or 2. Listen to what he says here. I had all but given up on dating until the kids were both teenagers or moved out. But this group gave me the hope to keep fighting for it. Go date your spouse, everyone, and don't take that time for granted."
I love it. I love it when they get some action going. And hey, totally understand this. Elisa and I were there at times where we didn't trust others. We've had babysitters, in the past, but there was a time when we did it. And then there came this point in time exactly where, the older one can watch the younger one, and you're not taking off, for hours away. You're maybe down the street, they can call you real quick if something is needed. So
well,
kudos.
And just kudos too to all of you in the One Family private Facebook group that provide that encouragement that show what you're doing, that allowed this person to see that it was something worth fighting for. So that's actually a shout out to the One Family.
Absolutely.
And all that you do to encourage others in marriage. And, this whole episode based around the fact that, there can be some embarrassing moments when your kids find your sex toys, when they, or maybe somebody else finds them. And this came up because in the One Family Facebook group, a wife had recently put up this post, and I have to read you the whole thing because there's just so much humor in it. My husband and I are in the kitchen cleaning, backs facing each other on opposite sides of the room. I hear footsteps behind me, and then there's a massager on the back of my neck. Does it feel good, Mom? No sooner did he finish his sentence when it dawned on me. Oh my gosh, I know that rhythm. This is not the massage gun. I whirl around, and there's my 6-year-old, vibrator in hand.
Nice.
My husband turns around at this point, mouth wide open with shock. I grabbed it from him and told him not to touch it again. Of course, he asked why. Because it's for grown-ups, not kids. I was mortified. He'd gotten into my bedside table drawer looking for the scissors I keep in there, because he couldn't find his scissors for something he was making. We keep the vibrator there for the sake of convenience. But I'm obviously going to have to pick a new place for it. Its new home will be in the Bedroom Adventure bundle bag, buried in my top dresser drawer.
Yes. And I do want to just focus on one thing here. That Bedroom Adventure bundle, I'm going to put a link here for it. In that bundle, we include the Liberator Zappa bag, which is a fantastic bag. Elise and I have had it for many, many years. Put it in there. The great thing is it is zip closed, but there is a way that you can actually even lock that whole bag up.
Because it's got the 2 zipper pulls, and so you can put a lock in through there. But
so something we learned in the, over the years.
Absolutely. And it was interesting because this one post, I loved all the empathy that
Yes.
the one family had for this wife and for their experience. But what really got my attention was the fact that there was so much conversation in the group. And I actually, I started seeing all the comments coming. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to do an episode on this. We need to talk about this. And then people are like, yes, let's do it. And, part of this has been part of our story too. We've had sex toys in our bedroom. We've had all of the different lubes on the nightstands. And I've often thought, when a housekeeper comes, I'm like, what does she think we do in here? But
and even Liberator products, because some of those are bigger.
True.
And many of you have even asked over the years, when we're talking about wedges and pillows and where do you keep those? But those
That's
as well have, now our children are older, but when they were younger still, you're sort of like, how do we where
do we put this? What do we tell them it is?
Yeah, when they pull it out and they use it like it's just sort of like a big pillow to lay on and, they're reading a book, with it, and you're thinking, all right, you know what I mean? I'm not going to say anything. I'm like, oh, no, don't be laying on that. They'd be like, why? It's a pillow. So, but in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, your mom and I were making love on that the other night.
Yeah. It's clean, though. It's clean. It's been washed. But the one story, as I was even prepping for this episode, where I was like, oh, gosh, I remember that moment vividly. It was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And the house that we were living in at the time had a very large master bathroom. Like if I was getting ready to put on my makeup or whatnot, our daughter would come in and she'd sit on the bathtub and she'd talk, or she'd wander around the bathroom because it was a massive bathroom. And we'd previously had sex and there was a penis ring sitting on the kitchen counter or on the bathroom counter. And so Abby's just kind of like talking to me and flitting around the bathroom and all this kind of stuff. And so she picks it up and she's just kind of turning it over because, we'd washed it. I put it on the counter. It was drying. And she looks at me and she's like,
and this was just a straight up like clear penis ring.
Oh, yeah.
It didn't have like a vibrator or
Nope,
anything on it. It was just, it was a thicker one too.
It was about as innocuous as you can get. Yeah. Right. And so she picks it up and she starts turning it over and she just looks at me and she goes, well, what is this? And I have, for many years, especially as the kids became teenagers, would always respond with, do you really want to know? And she looked at me and she's like, well, yes. And so I, to confirm, said, are you sure you really want to know? And that's when she made the connection, truthfully, that it probably had something to do with her dad and I having sex. And she just dropped it like a hot potato and walked out of the room and just was like, okay, I don't really want to know because you asked me twice. And that's just got to mean it's going to be something between you and dad. And I don't want to know.
That's one you've had with her. I've had another one with her that I was thinking about. And this is in the house that we lived in before we moved here. And one night you were gone off, I don't know, maybe doing some women's ministry stuff or whatever. And we're just in the room, just chilling. And we have that very large vibrator, which is like
a massage wand. Let's be honest.
Yes, it is. But for some reason, we hadn't put it away. So it was actually on the top of your nightstand.
Oh, yeah. Well, it sat there for a long time because it was just convenient.
Okay. Anyways, we're sitting there just having one of our chats, just daddy-daughter chatting it up, do. And then all of a sudden I notice she's just sort of looking and she just picks it up. And I'm like, oh, okay. And she's like, turns it on. Oh, wow, this is a nice massager, Dad. Can you massage me with it? I'm just like, okay. I'm not going to say anything because then it becomes this whole like embarrassment thing,
right?
Too. And so knowing that when we are using toys, they're clean, it's all good, whatever. And so I'm just like, she's like, but why does it have two sides to it? And one's like round and one's pointy. And I'm like, oh, the pointy side is to really get into those areas where, your muscles, and the rounded side is so like you're moving a bigger area.
You are fast on your feet, Tony DiLorenzo.
And then at some point in time, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. My hand's getting a little too vibrated out here or something like that. And we put it down.
So it turns out that we're not the only ones who have had these moments. In a recent Instagram stories poll, we asked you all the question, have you ever had an awkward moment when your kids discovered something that was intended for just the two of you? 52% of you had said yes. So if you're in that category, congratulations, you're not alone. If you're not in that category, congratulations, you have somehow managed to avoid all of that. embarrassment,
Yes.
awkward conversations, and things like that. And what I loved was you also shared, through the Facebook group, just because that post had gone up, you started sharing some of your stories.
Yes.
And just to let you all know that you're not alone, we're going to share some of them here in this episode. So if you haven't experienced this, you can just chuckle along with everybody else. And if you have experienced this, some of you are just going to be like, oh, wow. Oh, wow. One of them said, when my son was young, he used lube to spike his hair. Now, I personally have,
I'm just wondering how, that must have been some thick lube.
You got to think too, little kids, their hair can be really fine.
Yeah, that's true.
So it could just be, kids like to pump things or, get their hands. So he may have just used a lot.
I understand that, but if you're using Uber lube or something, it's so thin and fine, it wouldn't necessarily spike hair. So that's why I'm just saying it must have been a thicker lube.
Another person said, our granddaughter was watching TV laying on our Liberator. She saw my wife walk by and asked if she could bring her some snacks.
Exactly. Been there.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
When my daughter was much younger, she handed our cleaning lady my wife's rabbit, trying to help. For those of you that don't know, a rabbit is a type of vibrator, so
Yep.
that's an awkward moment.
It has the larger part of it, and then they're like two little rabbit ears.
Mm-hmm. When Grandma was babysitting our 3 kids, they had a race with 3 vibrators to see which would cross the finish line first.
Did Grandma not know those were vibrators?
Well, the kids might have just pulled it out and started playing with it, and by the time Grandma caught on, that's just what do you
or
do?
Grandma knew, and Grandma's like, I'm not saying anything about this. She's
nobody's talking
I
about
get it. My daughter's using it, or my son and daughter-in-law or whatever are using it. Let's go.
Yeah, because that's one of those things where it's like, oh, whose mom is that?
Yep.
And
and that's the other part of it too. It's whose mom is going for it there.
My 2-year-old daughter came running into the kitchen one day and said, look at my bracelet, Mom. It was a vibrating penis ring on her wrist. Needless to say, the toys got moved that day.
Hence, everybody, this is what we're saying already. That bedroom adventure bundle, that Zappa toy bag, it can fit a lot in there, and you can put a little lock on it. So just making it easy for all of us.
We had our daughter singing "Let It Go" into our vibrator once.
Oh,
because it could be a microphone. Depending on the size of one of the ones you have, it might look like a microphone.
And as a parent, you're probably like, "Yep, let it go, baby doll. let go of that vibrator."
I walked into my room, and my teenage son was holding my big bright orange wand. He thought it was a back massager. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, it doesn't really look like a sex toy, and it does look more like a back massager. But he was rubbing it on his arms.
I got to ask you, as a mom of a son, would you be able to use that again? I'm sure you would. I'm sure we would still just be wash the thing off and move on, right?
Probably.
You don't hold on to it. And I'm thinking sometimes, some people will hold on to oh my goodness, my child was just touching that. I can never use it again.
And if you have to get a new one, get a new one. Don't let that be the thing.
Yeah.
My children found that drawer. And we have a few rings that are different colors. And our boys, 7, 5, 4, and 2, were playing Pirate Treasure. And those were in their treasure chest. They brought them down to my husband to show him. And he was, of course, mortified. But I was highly amused. When the kids were littler, they found a condom and naturally needed to open it to explore. Stunned, my husband told them it was a toothbrush cover.
Oh, wow.
Now, stuck in his lie, he was confronted yet again the other night as they reflected on how they used to find those thin balloons and open them up, but they were slimy. Be careful about the stories that you tell your children, because you might be caught in some of them for a really, really long time.
I'm trying to think there was a period in time before you had your tubes tied that we were using condoms a lot, and I want to say there's something around. I just can't remember it myself. With the children having found, the bag. I don't know if they ever opened it or not, but I just remember something. That
was a really good story.
I know, that was horrible. Sorry, everybody, for that.
What's funny is I think, some of this too, because parenting is such an adventure. I don't have any funny stories with our son, but definitely our daughter. And I think it's just their different personalities in terms of how, and your kids may be like that too. But it's one thing to have the funny stories. It's a whole other thing to really talk about, okay, how do we protect ourselves and our marriage and set ourselves up for success to maybe minimize some of those awkward moments. So we're going to be talking about that after this break.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Streaming December 12th on Peacock. Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie are back.
That's hot. Loves it.
For a show-stopping reunion that will prove putting on an opera is anything but simple.
We're really good at this.
One thing's for sure, they won't be upstaged.
Good to have you back. Come on, we've got a show to do.
Paris and Nicole, The Encore, a 3-part reunion special, streaming December 12th, only on Peacock.
We're back. And we've been talking about those awkward or embarrassing moments that happen when the kids discover your own grown-up toys in your bedroom. But we do need to, we couldn't just do a show like this, do an episode like this and just have it be like, okay, well, here's everybody's funny stories. Congratulations, y'all go on and just don't make your own funny stories. Instead, we want to talk about, how do you set yourselves up for success so that, maybe you avoid this entirely, or in the event that you don't, you've got your strategy in place for how to handle it. And, one of the comments that I saw repeated in this thread and in other conversations that we've had is, some of you were just like, the kids are not allowed in our room without knocking. It is an off-limits place to them. Nobody gets to come in unless mom or dad have said it's okay. And then clearly know who's in your room and what's going on, and you can keep your eyeballs on them and you don't have this problem. So that's one very, very simple way to do that. Other people have shared, we have a toolbox with a padlock.
There you go.
On it that we keep in our bedroom entertainment center. I've told a couple very close friends that when I die, it's their job to get it and make it disappear. We wouldn't want to traumatize the adult children. And I love that, because now we're even still worried about what's going to happen to the adult children when they find out that mom and dad have had, this amazing, wonderful, adventure-filled sex life. So kudos to you that have already enlisted your adult friends to make sure your adult children are safe and secure after your passing. Others have shared that they've used a lockbox that actually looks like a book, because how many of your kids are going to pick up a really, really thick book? And I have to say, I've seen this before on Amazon. And the number one bestseller, most reviews and everything, is one that looks like a dictionary. So, I was like, okay, what kid knows what a dictionary is?
I think in this, So
the dictionary might be a safe thing to have on your bedroom nightstand.
Right. I'm looking at this thing right now because Elisa put it here, and I'll put a link to it here in the episode notes. It's really cool. It honestly looks like a book. You would not know it. You flip it open, and once you flip it open, that's where the lock is, and you would have the key to it. Obviously, there are many different colors and styles, but I'll put a link to the one here so you guys can check it out. And if that's something where it's like, oh, that makes more sense for us, we can. Oh my gosh, there's one that's even a Holy Bible.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. You all figure that out if that works for yourselves.
I'm just looking here on Amazon. I'm like, oh, wow. I'm like, is that a real one? And I'm like, no, that's a secret safe one.
Secret safe. Okay, there you go. But the challenge with that is that it may be a size thing for you. And so if you do need something larger, again, the very first post that kind of kicked off this whole episode was talking about having a toy bag, something that you can lock, something that, if you've got the larger toys and things like that. It's figuring out, ultimately what this comes down to is it's figuring out what's going to work for the two of you.
Absolutely.
Right? Where are you going to... Because this is a twofold thing, right?
Can I say something though too?
Absolutely.
For some of you, may just be like, I don't even get it. 52% of you said this has happened to you. So there's 48% of you are like, this has never happened. And so for those of you, you must have a really good stash. You have hid it well enough where it's like they are not going to find it, which is awesome. I think the big thing is either way is understanding toys between you and your spouse are something that's fun, that can enhance your sexual intimacy. It's just having an understanding, when somebody does find it, what are we going to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, because some of it, you say they're hidden really well. I also think there are probably people that don't have toys.
Okay, when that's
And,
true
and so
too.
you don't have this experience because you don't have although you might have lube, so it could still fall into the lube thing. But it is looking at this and just saying, hey, what's the strategy for us, for our marriage, where we're going to keep the things that we use for our sexual intimacy? Because, you start putting it in like a top dresser drawer over here or in the entertainment center over here. It may actually put you in a place where you're like, dang, it's not convenient.
That is true. And that has happened to us.
That's happened to us, right? So you've got to have that balance of convenience and planning and
Accessibility.
yes, accessibility, and everything is safe and secure. I don't know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah, because
for all
there
of you.
are times, and I just want to say this too, because even for Elise and I, there are times where like a toy, even lube, isn't even like on the top of mind. And then all of a sudden you're getting into it and it's foreplay, right? We're talking about sexual intimacy here. You're in that and you're like, oh, like that would be fun to pull out. And in my mind, this is just me, maybe you don't do this, but in my mind, I'm like, where is that thing? And I'm not like going to stop everything we're doing in this moment because we're in a heightened, passionate point and be like, let me just jump out of bed and go try to find this. There have been times I think I have done that, and it's not like it just I've seen it, and it's just sort of like I come back and Elisa's like, okay, like like I'm glad you took 5 minutes to go
Yep.
try to find something that really didn't matter, and I can see she's sort of like, okay, now I need to readjust and get myself back into where I was. So I'm just saying it's like accessibility. And if you just have it in a quick bag or it's in that, that book safe or something, I think that's the big thing to me. Because, yeah, if you have stuff like here, there, and everywhere, it's like...
Yeah, keep like I would suggest to the best of your ability, keep everything in one place. That way you just know where you're headed. But I also want to say just on an emotional, I mean, obviously this whole episode's kind of been talking about sexual intimacy, but on an emotional intimacy aspect of all of this, these moments when something happens, they're just an opportunity for the two of you to go, okay, how are we going to handle this? You have this opportunity to strengthen your bond, to have those knowing looks go like, all right, are you taking this one? Am I taking this one? The opportunity to laugh. Like I opened this episode with the quote that you might be embarrassed now, but it'll be a really funny story later. And there's a lot of truth to that. Right. And so it's like,
laughter is good for the soul.
Laughter is good for your marriage.
Yeah.
Right. And it becomes, these moments become those memories that the two of you will go back to. And, stepping into this place of saying, okay, where do we need to have our stuff? But more importantly, I mean, our children are both adults now. And so we can have these conversations with them and be like, hey, remember that time? And it's funny. And that's what I would
It may be funny to us. I don't know if it's funny to them.
It's still awkward to them. It is still awkward to them. They're just like, la, 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 like, don't talk to us about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think what it starts to do is it becomes this way of engaging both your emotional and your sexual intimacy.
Absolutely.
Hey, we have these toys. We're using them. Maybe for some of you, you're like, okay, well, I hadn't thought about toys, but now like I'm thinking about it. But we've also got to have this conversation about where we're going to keep them. Like for some of you, that may be the first conversation you have this week is, hey, we're thinking about this. But we do have children, so let's also think about how we're going to secure these things so we're not having somebody do, style their hair with lube, or grandma's watching the vibrator races, or, that type of thing. But it's...
Can I say one thing too?
Yeah.
It's one of those things over the years, and you guys have known this who've been listening for some time. Elise and I have talked about lube, sex toys over the last 15 years of our marriage here on the One Extraordinary Marriage Show. And there were times when the toys were used often. You can go back and listen. Like we'll share. Like there are times when it was an almost every time occurrence, and over the years though that has shifted and changed. So what used to be, oh my gosh, like make sure that bag is on the bed, like, or have the toy or whatever, that's shifted, and it's like it's no big deal. And yet I will say this. We still have them in our home, and yet they are secure. They're in a bag. They're somewhere. So if we want to grab it, we could. at the same time, it's not just laying around for people to see. And so I think it doesn't matter if you've used them or you still have them or whatever. I think it's just a wise thing to do. Like, let's just make sure that they're sort of put away in their own spot, locked down if you need to lock them down because of the age of your children or whatever. But then that gives you just the peace of mind.
And ultimately, sometimes these are just those conversations that you have that make you chuckle. And some of you are going to listen to this episode and be like, can you believe that happens in some marriages? Can you believe some couples have had to go through that? And, like we said a few minutes ago, laughter is really good for a marriage. It's good for the two of you to have those shared moments. And, this week you're going to spend some time just kind of thinking about it, right? Assessing, what do we need to do to just make sure those items that we use for our sexual intimacy are accessible and secure, right? Accessible and secure, and figuring that out for the two of you.
Yeah, I hope you guys had a good time this week and just got to laugh a little bit, especially with the stress of the holidays and where we're at as we're coming into the new year and all of that. We wanted to bring you something that would allow you to laugh, just have some joy, have some fun, and maybe even just reminisce, have some memories with your own spouse about what may have happened or hasn't happened or how you addressed it, because there's something about married couples. We're resilient, right? Things happen. We have to adjust. We have to work together as a team, and even around when somebody may find our sex toy stash. So you guys this week have that conversation, determine what you need to do. We're here for you. We're praying for you. We're excited for you and all that you're doing in your marriage. You guys go have a fantastic week. Love you guys. Thank you for listening to the One Extraordinary Marriage Show. If you love this podcast, please leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you are listening. Your review helps others find the show and know that it's the right fit for them and their marriage.